My name is Eiko. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Seven Learnings. And I'm here also with the Seven Learnings team, Frat, who will support on the technical topics here in the webinar, and also collect some questions over the chat. And also Kimberly's here, who is responsible for sales in the DACH region at Seven Learnings. What we will talk about today in the webinar is about the evolution of retail pricing from Excel to predictive pricing. And before I jump into the webinar, I want to give you some background about us. We are Seven Learnings. We are offering retailers a pricing software, price optimization software. And we are originally a spin-off of the Freie Universität in Berlin, where we collaborate with the Center of Machine Learning and Robotics. Our co-founder and CEO, Felix Hoffmann, was formerly responsible for the global pricing algorithm at Zalando. We have built our system together with About You, so with some of the leading online retailers in Europe. And we use our software today in all relevant sales channels in retail, so online, own shops, marketplaces, but also offline. We do this across the board in different retail segments: pharmacy, furniture, fashion, electronics, you name it. So yeah, just a short intro about us. Let's talk about the evolution of pricing. And I mean, pricing is a very, very old discipline ever since capitalism was invented and we stopped doing barter, so exchanging goods for goods. People had to find prices for their products. And obviously the pricing discipline went through a lot of change. And I think a big change came about with the introduction of digital tools, which allowed a lot more number crunching, but also processing a lot more price changes. And we are currently in the pricing discipline going through a change of a similar magnitude, where companies are using machine learning to make pricing decisions. And machine learning is really fundamentally changing the way pricing is being done. Still, what we see is that most retailers use simple price rules to do their pricing. And I will talk a little bit more about some examples of these price rules and their pitfalls later. But this is still what most retailers are doing today. But before I start talking about rule-based pricing, I want to give you a little glance about the power of AI in regards to pricing. I mean, we all know ChatGPT. I think all of us played around a little bit with it in the last couple of months, and I think we are all aware of the power of these kind of tools and how they will change the life and the way people work in many disciplines. Yeah, for example, maybe content management, but also blue collar programming. I think that's what ChatGPT showed us. And there are, if we look at the pricing side, AI has a similar power here already. And I chose this example here on the right, saying, what are the optimal prices for Black Friday? Now, that's not the user interface we use, but it's similarly easy to come up with the optimal prices for Black Friday for a certain set targets using predictive pricing. So this can already be used today, and the optimal prices for a Black Friday, where you might need weeks usually to plan this, are just one mouse click away. And this kind of AI revolution in pricing is already happening. But let's look at rule-based pricing, and let's start with some easy examples, competition-based pricing. Now, let's say, let's think about a bakery in Germany in the 70s. I mean, I'm German. We all love our bread, so I chose this example. And let's say the neighboring bakery sells their bread for 70 Pfennig. Now, it's cents, we know, but back then 70 Pfennig. And we decide to undercut this price by 5 Pfennig and sell for 65 Pfennig to attract more customers to our bakery. That's a typical example of competition-based pricing. And it also shows that it's actually quite easy to implement, right? What I need to know is what is the competition doing. It's a very aggressive strategy. It can help me to gain a lot of growth and revenue. But at the same time, it can be quite difficult to get those competitor prices. Yeah, that's kind of the problem if I want to use this approach. But one of the problems with this is that it's often not a very profitable strategy, and it also can lead to a situation where the blind is following the blind. So you don't really know whether your competition is actually doing a good job. Yeah, let's move to another example. And sorry, I didn't mention that in the beginning. If you have any questions in between, please just write them in our chat also. There will be time at the end of the webinar to answer all of these questions. Let's look at another example. Let's look at cost-based pricing. What do you do here? You take your purchasing costs and you just add a fixed margin. Yeah, and obviously that protects your margin. So it's a very profitable strategy. But what it does not consider a lot is what happens in the market. What are competitors doing? What are customers doing towards price changes? How do they react to price changes? So the danger of this is that you're not selling enough, and that you have a negative impact on your revenue. And another example of rule-based pricing are flat discounts. Usually we discover them or observe them in for the life cycle products, so products that should be sold off at the end of a certain season, where you also have products on stock, and then you start using flat discounts like 20% on everything. And this is an example everybody knows in Germany, used by the DIY brand Praktika, where they always had this 20% on everything other than animal food. Actually, many people think they went bankrupt because they used this strategy. Because what is the problem with this? It's not very smart to use the same discount for all of your products. Very likely, if you want to sell your overstock, there are products where you need just 10% discount or 5% discount. So you could save all of this margin you're giving out to your client and still reach your stock target. Maybe there are even products where you have to give 30% to reach your stock target, but you're not reaching that or using this flat discount. And also what we observe is that companies start too late with these kind of discounts, usually at the end of the season, where there's low demand for the product they are selling. So they have to even use higher discounts. And it would be a lot smarter to start earlier with discounting, and not only do this at the end of the season. So yeah, we kind of saw some examples of how price rules are being used, and they all have in common that they use some kind of input factor and combine combine it with some what if logic at the end. And what we also have in retail is that the environment is getting more and more complex over time. So many of these factors are changing, and there are new factors coming in. For example, supply chain disruptions. So the stock situation is volatile. Then I'm changing something on the marketing side, and I should align my pricing strategy with my marketing. I'm increasing my assortment size. Maybe even adding private label products, which makes it more complex to price them, going into different markets, different countries where I might want to use differentiated prices. Then I have inflation. So there are tons of factors that are important for pricing. And if I want to build an algorithm now with combining all of these input factors with some rules, it's easily imaginable how complex this can become, especially if I look at a big assortment of, I don't know, 20,000 products, for example. I very likely will end up with a system that is unmanageable because of its complexity. And that means in the end, what I will do is that I will simplify. I will stay with the rules that I have. So there's a certain static in this, and I'm not doing what I should do. I should test them and A/B test them and check if these rules are really optimal. That's not happening. And then in the end, this leads to suboptimal prices and less profit, especially in pricing, where I have such a big impact on when I improve this. So kind of the rule of thumb is if I do set prices 1% better, I drive 6% bottom line. This will cost me a lot of money because I'm not using all of the data that is available to find optimal prices. Now, the good thing is we don't have to use rule-based pricing. There's now new technology out there that we can use to make smarter decisions. And predictive pricing is combining kind of the leading technology for pricing today. And what it does is that it collects all of those relevant input factors, internal data like product attributes, transaction data, stock data, marketing data, but also external factors like competitor prices or seasonality or even a Black Friday as a data feature. And what it does is that it predicts how price changes affect the main KPIs of the retailer. So what happens on an SKU level when I change price? What happens with my sales quantities, with my revenues, with my profits and my profit margins? And then to find the optimal prices out of all of these options and forecasts, you can run an optimization based on your targets. So what predictive pricing is doing is that it combines forecasting using machine learning technology, forecasting of sales quantities, but also measuring of price elasticities, which is kind of the holy grail of price optimization, and then to run optimizations based on this data. And that makes pricing radically easy. Now, if we compare this rule-based pricing and predictive pricing in an operational process. So what's the difference here is that, let's say management comes to me and says, I have to increase my profit by 5% with rule-based pricing. I have to come up with the logics now, with the price rules that will fulfill this target. And that's not easy, especially if I have a very, very complex system. With predictive pricing, really, what I just need to know is that I want to reach these 5% higher profit, and I can use this target, and the algorithm finds the prices for me, and I can simulate the impact on my main KPIs, and that is very, very powerful. Yeah, and there are a couple of advantages from this or using this. One of the biggest advantages is that I systematically increase my profit and my revenue with this. So, I mean, we test this with each of our clients. On an average, we increase our profit for our clients by more than 10%. So that's that's a lot of money. There's a high return on investing into pricing technology, and especially if you move from rule-based to predictive pricing. I want to touch on some of those advantages. It's a higher degree of automation because you don't have to administer all those price rules anymore, and the algorithm learns from each new transaction. So you don't have to do testing all the time. You have this continuous learning built into the system. The system also, or predictive pricing also uses competitor prices. It uses it for modeling of price elasticities. Obviously, the price elasticity is a lot different around the competitor price. It uses a lot more data. Yeah, it uses transaction data, stock data, weather data, information about seasonality. It measures price elasticity. So what happens if I change the price? What happens with my demand, with the sales quantities? What happens if I change the price for one product? What happens to my sales quantities here? That's what measures price elasticity. And that's really the holy grail of price optimization. Understanding this on a product level enables me to find optimal prices for my products. And the way we use this is that we learn price elasticities, not just on a product level, but across products, which makes our price elasticity module very robust, which also enables us, for example, to price new products or long tail items, so low selling items. Because you're not dependent on a competitor price, you can also set private optimal prices for private label products or bundles that you created, and you can do channel-specific pricing, which is often the retail case, country-specific pricing. So there are lots of advantages of using predictive pricing. And what I would like to do next is to show you a, sorry, I just have to figure out how I do this here. I want to show you a short demo to show you how predictive pricing works, because I think it's interesting to hear all this theory about predictive pricing, but it's even more powerful to see how it actually looks like. So let's look at an example here where we look at a simple optimization. It's actually an optimization for a fashion case. So and that's how you use predictive pricing. You run optimizations, and you look at them for a certain date range. So I'm now optimizing prices for the next two weeks, and I'm looking at goals and targets for the next 2 weeks. And what I'm also doing is that I set certain boundaries, and I can still use rules for that, price rules. We are not radical, or predictive pricing is not radical about not using price rules, but they are more used to set boundaries for the optimization. So here I fix some prices. I also want to not to sell too much in this of this new season, but ensure that I'm only going 20% over my target sales. And I want to have a certain relationship to competitor prices. Yeah. But obviously these rules could be totally different. The powerful thing of predictive pricing is this curve at the end of the day, this profit and revenue curve, and it shows me the profit optimal line. So I can use predictive pricing to reach any of this profit, revenue, sales, and margin. I just have to know what my goal is, what I want to optimize toward. What are my goals? And it also tells me where I am today. So if I would just optimize in this point, I would actually increase my profit by more than 20%. In this case, it would also increase my revenue revenue a little bit or stay stable and increase decrease my sales. So maybe I don't want to decrease sales, so I would move a little bit more towards that direction. And to get the optimal prices for this target, all I have to do is to click submit, and the optimization runs through. So that's how easy it is. It tells you what you can reach with your assortment, with pricing in terms of profit, revenue, and sales and margins. And all you have to do is to choose what you want to achieve. And then obviously it calculates the optimal prices out of this. It also shows me what kind of the impact of this is. So how do my prices change overall? How does my margin change, my profit, my revenue, my sales? And I can look at this on a product basis and form an opinion about that, do some quality checks if I want to do that. And this is how easy, for example, setting prices for Black Friday could be. Yeah, I just wanted to show this real quick to you so you understand kind of how predictive pricing looks in action.
Eiko,
yeah.
We have like 7 more minutes.
Yeah, I thank you, Frat, for reminding me. And I just wanted to wrap it up kind of with the main benefits again of using predictive pricing. So really what it can do for you, increase your profitability. On average, what we see is an increase of 10% in profits. It's strategic agnostic. You can also steer towards more revenue or more sales. It's based on your targets. So you can steer pricing based on your targets. That's very easy and intuitive. It's less manual work because you don't have to administer all these rules. And there's a forecast included, so it can also inform your supply chain decisions. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. And I would ask you to post your questions into the chat.
Thank you, Eiko. Actually, we have one question from Tobias. Tobias, you can, if you want, like unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
Tobias, do you want to ask your question directly? I think you just have to unmute yourself.
I think you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Okay, but then I will just pick up your question, Tobias. So your question is, how many data points, actual purchases with different prices does the algorithm need to come up with a reliable prediction? Yeah, so what we usually say is that we need at least 100 high sellers. So it's difficult to come up with a rule of thumb, to be honest. But what we usually say is that you at least need 100 high sellers and that you need 2 to 3 price changes on average on these high sellers. The thing is that the way we use it, our elasticity module is quite robust because it's learning across products. So we don't necessarily need price changes on each product we want to set optimal prices on. Yeah, because we're learning across products. But this is kind of a rule of thumb. Obviously, if you have made more price changes in the past, there's more to learn of. That's absolutely true. Yeah, happy to engage in a detailed discussion and look at your specific case if you want to after this meeting. So, further questions? I actually don't quite get Fira's question, but if he wants to ask it, he is happy to ask it to everybody.
Is it a question here? Is it all more applicable to like online shops?
You mean versus offline?
Versus offline, yeah.
I mean, online is the lead market for it. There's no question about it. Why? Because it's operationally a lot easier to change prices, right? And usually what we also see is that the organizations are more data-driven there. So the maturity of providing the data that are needed to do predictive pricing is higher. But you can, and we also use it for setting offline prices. And the math is very similar to that. Usually there are more questions about making it operational. So how often can I change prices? And then often, if you don't have electronic shelf labels, you have to prioritize your price changes. And you can actually do this very well with predictive pricing, where you can measure, like get an estimation on the impact. So you can decide what are the, 1,000 prices you want to change this month, if that's your frequency, or this week. So yes, you can do it, but it is a bit more complicated than using it in an online space. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I thought so, of course, but
yeah, thank you.
Maybe a short extension if there are no other
sure
questions. But then I would imagine, partly know this, that retailers typically have, at least big ones, typically have their own data science teams that do demand forecasting because they own all the data. They can kind of play with and build models.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe on your experience, are you supposed to, or are you doing this now? Do you interact them, or you provide them your model or your models like in SaaS modes, or how it's done, or they exchange data with you to arrive to a robust model? So
I mean, the question is, what do they want to do? If they just do the demand forecasting, or also do the price optimization. It kind of depends on what they are doing. It is a SaaS model, but what we would do is involve the team very closely. Yeah. And also share, for example, what are the price elasticities that we are measuring, or what are the accuracy measures that are coming out of the system. At least in our experience, what we're doing here is very, very specific, and trying to build your own system around this is not easy. What is easy is to come up with one demand forecast, or with measuring price elasticity once, but having a system in place which you can continuously use for price optimization is not very easy, and also very costly to build that. So yeah, there are companies who would prefer to do it in-house, but I think there are very many good arguments to have an expert team working on that, and also to benchmark your internal approach actually against this benchmark team. Because how do you know that what they come up with is actually good? You only know that if you test it against something else. And at least what we see is that, often these internal teams are not as good yet, or there is something to improve. And I hope that answers your questions, how we engage and how we work with these teams.
Yeah, quite. Thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions I can answer? I think we are also at the end of the time of the webinar, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Frat, you're also nodding. That's but then I thank you for your attention and your questions, and I would be very happy to also jump to a intro call after the webinar, please just reach out to us. And yeah, I wish you a nice rest day. Thank you. Bye-bye.